All right. Welcome, everybody, to Gen Y Jazz. This is my personal project during lockdown times to uh, explore the wisdom that my friends have to offer, the great players of our time. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. Today's guest is the cat. Joel Ross is a recording artist, a Blue Note recording artist, band leader, sideman, composer, arranger, vibraphonist, pianist, drummer. I'm sure I'm missing some stuff. And before he was all of that, he was my roommate. So we're gonna talk about that, I'm sure a little bit. But Joel, how the heck are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I can't complain. It's good to see you, Sean.
Likewise, bro. Um, how has the last year or so been as far as busyness, and have you, it looks like you've been able to gig a little bit, but I'm sure there have been some major restrictions. How's that been for you, man?
It's been, the same as everybody. A year ago, just everything just stopped and shut down, and I was running around before all of this. I was running around quite a bit. So once like March hit last year, it stopped everything, and I just, you know me, I try to keep a positive attitude. So I just took it as like, all right, well now it's time for a break,
Yep,
and
yep.
so
Good for you.
there was. I just tried to use this time to the best that I could. And so, like last year, just getting things done, like tax stuff, like I normally wouldn't be able to really focus on while on the road.
Hmm.
Um, Incorporated, there is now a Joel Ross Good Vibes Inc.
Is that right?
Yeah, man.
I had no idea. So okay, I'm gonna write that down. That's something we should talk about for sure.
Yeah, man.
um,
And then I went back to school last semester to
no kidding.
to finish my degree. So yeah, right now I'm currently, this is my second semester, and I have one more semester. I should be done in December.
um, and are you at new school right now?
Still at new school.
Are you also on faculty at new school?
Technically, man, I guess technically I can teach private lessons
I wonder how many people are or have been on faculty while completing their degree
at the
at
same
your school.
time.
Yeah.
I know it's a thing with, I guess, universities in general for older folks. I've heard of them like being on faculty and also like completing their doctorate or something. But hey, man,
Yeah, man.
right? Just using the time.
You're working, man. I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm really happy for you. That's awesome. Well, so before we get into all that, take us back. Um, I have questions about baby Joel,
Mm.
and how this vibraphone thing came into your life, and how jazz specifically came into your life. So first of all, where are you from? Oh, that's my dog in the background.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Don't know if you can hear him, but yeah, man. Where were you born?
I am from Chicago, Illinois. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I have a twin brother. We both started off as drummers, percussionists. Grew up in church, so every week we'd be watching our godfather play drums, or the other church drummer, and just like sit behind them and emulate them. And my parents aren't musicians, but they've always been music lovers, so they spent our entire childhood and adolescence supporting that. Started on drums, played drums in the church, a little bit of keyboard. Didn't really get into the vibraphone until fifth grade. We were 10 years old. We joined our elementary school's concert band. And long story short, I ended up playing the mallet instruments at my brother's insistence.
Yep.
And that same year, we auditioned for Chicago's All City programs, concert band and jazz band. I played mallet instruments in the concert band. So they suggested I play vibes in the jazz band. At the time, I never heard of the vibes. I didn't have any interest in playing the vibes. I was just like, I'm trying to play drums. But the instructor and my dad again strongly insisted that I stick with the vibraphone, and I've been doing that ever since. Going on, I believe, 15 years now, 16 years.
Wow, man. I should say your brother Josh would be a cool person to interview too, because he, in addition to being a great player, he's got some other cool projects
Yeah.
happening that I think musicians should know about. At this juncture, would you mind just saying a quick word about your brother
Not at
and what
all.
he's doing?
Right now, he's working on this. I believe it's an app, eventually a website. It's a platform called Stage, spelled STAJ, and basically it's like Yelp for musicians, for local musicians. It's really to in juncture a juncture with musicians and venues where musicians go up, put their information where they're performing and everything, and you can go on the app, find out who's playing where, click on their profile, see what they're doing, go to the venue, see what the venue's doing, and just a way to find out what's happening and who's playing where. He's starting off in Chicago, but he's already been in touch with a lot of venues across the country actually, and
Great,
eventually he's looking to expand it to be a nationwide thing. And
great.
I believe he's either already launched, or should be launching soon. He'll be able to, he would love to give more details about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can pass along the
I
invitation for
will.
me. Shout out to Josh. But that's great, man. And yeah, we need that kind of stuff out here for
Yeah, man.
sure. But all right, my friend. So you said you picked up the vibes at 10,
hmm
and then what between 10 and let's say 18, which is when I met you, what happened that led you in the path? You said you started in concert bands. So
hmm
what kind of switched over to jazz for you?
Starting that year that I started playing vibes, joining the All City Jazz Band led to other jazz bands. Eventually, um, going to high school, we eventually went to the first public arts high school in Chicago, Chi Arts, Chicago High School for the Arts, and that was a brand new program. And at the time, Nicole Mitchell, renowned flutist, she was the head of jazz. And so, going from All City Elementary School Jazz Band, which is essentially it's a big band. We're playing like Red Clay,
Yeah, yeah.
Birdland,
Hmm.
Mercy, 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 Mercy,
Yeah.
uh, to playing like, looking back on it now, Miss Mitchell was introducing us to the swirl. It was just like the avant-garde, or just at least open opening our minds to a different way of thinking. And
Sure.
I mean, in high school, I met her, and then also with my high school, there was a partnership with the Thelonious Monk Institute, now the Herbie Hancock Institute, and their educator who would go around to different schools, high schools, JB Dias, he would come, give us master classes, work on things. I mean, that's where I learned piano. He would give us these packets with chords and transcriptions and different things, and I would just study those and work on the different comping methods and harmony and theory things. And he had an instructor that would come work with us, I believe, every other day, a local musician from Louisville who's in Chicago now, Gerard Harris, a close teacher of mine. But also, we had guest artists at the end of every year for a concert. So the first year was Benny Green, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Second year was Eric Reed.
Wow.
Third year was Sean Jones. And the fourth year was Gerald Clayton. When I met Gerald, that was the start of a relationship, not only with him, but with the musicians of his era. Because, growing up, I was more or less into like classic. Like, I was listening to Milt Jackson, Miles,
Right.
Thelonious Monk, and Train for the most part. So meeting Gerald and Sean, but meeting Gerald really introduced me to the contemporary music of the day and age, and that's how I got into Ambrose and Robert Glasper and Jay Dilla and everything. So that was before I came to Brubeck. To get to Brubeck, I believe one of those years I had met Stefan Harris at the Chicago Jazz Festival backstage, and we met and everything, and he said to keep in touch. And so once I was getting ready to go to college, I got in touch with him. He told me about the program at Brubeck, how he was taking over as artist in residence, and Sean, the rest is history.
Well, so before we get to that history, let's explore some like one quick thing that has always kind of nagged at me, and not in a bad way, but just it's always sort of been there. When we arrived at Brubeck,
Mhm.
I was the only one, I think, until Lucas, who had gone to a public high school, right?
Mhm.
you guys had all done performing arts things, and could you talk a bit about? And one of the things about that was that always impressed me was not only had you guys checked out more music than I did, but you knew those artists personally. You met them at the, if they came to campus or whatever. Um, would you say if that hadn't happened, if you hadn't attended Shy Arts, you would have gone in this direction?
I fully think that I would not have. I mean, you know I think we end up where we're going to end up somehow, some way. But
Right,
I would most definitely say Shy Arts provided a lot of opportunities that a student just normally wouldn't be able to experience. I did, my last 2 years of high school, I was doing the Monk High School All Stars. That's
right,
where I met all the cats we know: Elena, Adam O'Farrell,
right,
James, Mike Mitchell. That's I wouldn't have had that if I didn't go to Shy Arts. And that's how I was able to meet some of the musicians that we ended up playing with and meeting. That's how I met Christian McBride, for example.
right,
I mean,
right.
it's and it was that helped to have that relationship so that when we see them again, it's like, oh, they remember. You know, that's really what helps moving forward.
That's awesome, man. And you mentioned that uh, you had been checking out the tradition, and I
Mhm.
think that's been pretty consistent throughout your musical journey. I was just listening to an interview you did at the Jazz Gallery, and Edward Gavitt asked you, who your influences were. You said Miles. Let's see. You said Miles, Train, and Monk, which you just said here actually, and then he pressed you for for contemporary
Contemporary.
people, and you said Wayne, Ron, and Barry Harris. Wayne Shorter, Ron Carter, and Barry Harris. So there's definitely that element of your artistry together, right? Um, and when I met you, I heard a lot of Milt Jackson. Like I
Yeah,
heard bebop.
that was when we met. I was still heavy into bags. That's for vibraphone. That was all I knew. I hadn't spent too much time. I hadn't spent any time with Bobby. I'm ashamed to say, and minimal time with Lionel Hampton,
Sure.
and that was because I resonated so much with just the sound, Bags' sound, the voice he had on the instrument, and the way he came to the instrument. He was also a vocalist who sung in church.
Hmm.
Started playing the vibraphone. He played piano as well, but started playing the vibraphone, slowed the motor down to match the vibrato of his voice. I was like, that is killer, you know. And so I was really into that, and also Monk, Miles, Train, just them as individual voices and as band leaders is what stood out to me the most, and so that's why I was so heavy into them.
Well, and what I'm getting at, and you touched on the band leader thing, so I want to talk with you about that in a second. But what I'm getting at with the tradition thing is you also mentioned that your personal acquaintance with Gerald Clayton is kind of what maybe opened you to some of these other influences. And I can tell you, one thing that impressed me when I met you was that even though you were playing in that traditional way, you were planning a band.
Yeah.
At 18, you were planning what became Good Vibes, right?
Hmm.
And you were composing music that was not 251.
Oh yeah.
It was not 4/4. Whatever.
Hmm.
It was eye-opening for me as someone who had never composed, who had only ever led bands in like restaurants where no one's listening, right? I didn't have that sort of artistic vision that you
Hmm.
had. And so is it Gerald alone, or was there some other
Man,
force?
you know what it was? I mean, it's all those Houston cats. Jalen, James, meeting Jeremy, meeting Mike Mitchell, Dallas.
Yeah,
They were already doing something just a little left. All the things with time and everything.
right.
And so in a sense, related to that, that senior year of high school, like being introduced to Gerald, having to learn his music for a gig. Um, I was listening to a lot of Dilla that year, but like none of that is like odd times or anything.
Sure.
Uh, but just from listening to Gerald, listening to a lot of Glasper's trio stuff, there was a lot of that manipulating time in that music, and so that was a lot of that was in my ear. And if you remember that first year of Brubeck, me and Jalen would just be talking about, we'll just be practicing a bunch of those Glasper tunes, or at least trying to write something in that vein.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of it came from once I got there. I mean, once I met James senior year of high school, he was already writing things of that nature, and he and I would be throwing ideas and tunes back and forth at each other. He'd be sending me something, and be like, "All right, play this, all right, record it, and send it back to me," and we'd be doing that. And also when I met Adam O'Farrell, I mean, he introduced me to VJ, to listening to VJ's music. Um, that was also if we're explicitly talking about like music with mixed meter and different things like that. He exposed me to that. Um, and then just my natural wanting to, you know, it was something new and I wanted to learn it. So just like Stefan was saying, if there's something you can't do, write it. You know.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I learned that not from Stefan, but from you. So, it's funny how even though I was with Stefan at the same time, right?
Mhm,
Different lessons impart at different times and through
mhm.
different, you know, lenses, I guess. But okay, so now you're at Brubeck, and you're writing music. You're correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember you being a big shedder, a big practicer at the
And,
time. You
oh,
you
you know.
played. You played for hours. I mean, you would play with the group, but also with Jalen and combos and whatever. But I don't remember you just like going to a practice room. Is that fair? I don't want to.
Oh no, it's true. No, you you know me. That's true. I mean for me and Stefan's lessons, there was some late nights at the tower. I mean,
Sure,
some
sure.
things just and it's what I needed. I was truthful with him about that, and he was like, "All right, well, I'm gonna get you right. You're gonna have to shed." But for the most part, not so much. Definitely not so much. Like besides what Stefan gave me, not so much on the instrument. I would be sitting at the piano. I could do that for hours,
Hmm.
and I was doing that for hours, working out ideas, trying to write things. Um, because I feel like there was a lot of practicing and that went into like all the rehearsals we were doing, all the
Right.
playing situations that we had. I would be trying to implement something that I'm working on into those situations, practicing that in that situation, trying to knock out two birds in one stone.
Nice.
Um,
Cool. And then could you talk for a second about Stefan and what he did? He I've mentioned on this show before. I consider him one of the 4 or 5 best teachers I've ever met
mhm,
in jazz, of course, but just in general. He has
mhm.
this exemplary credential as far as being a being in pedagogy, right? So
Yeah,
so could you talk about what he imparted specifically to you?
I mean, the man is a genius in my opinion. Just the way he learns, the way he learns, but the way he teaches is he in a way that I sort of do. He breaks down how to approach a given situation. He could he just like even with working with us as an ensemble, he would listen to us and then break down what it was that he was hearing and what we would work on as an ensemble. And he did that for me as a musician, as a practitioner. He looked at my technique, told me what I was doing wrong, and taught me how to redo it with the theory stuff, with the ear training things that he was working on. Uh, we started from scratch. He would tell us exactly how he got to where he how we got to the whole theory, building the scales and everything, picking out our chords. It was uh, very I don't know the word, but just the way that the information is organized,
Hmm.
that really helps me. That's how I think. Very organized and think. All right, this you do this, you get this. All right, you need to do this. All right, change this, that such and such like that. And so he I feel like he got me into thinking like that. But also he just completely revamped my technique. I mean, just the ear training stuff that we were working on, he supremely got my ears together. That was always a goal, but just what he was teaching us was I feel like it was just perfect for me. Just to be able to really get my ears to a level that I'm happy with.
Yeah, and to that end, I would encourage people listening to, go on YouTube or Google or whatever, Joel Ross, find something from 2012. You know, 2011, and then listen to 2015. You know, and you can hear it. I mean, it's not that you didn't have technique. It's like you said, it's revamped. It's a
Hmm.
completely different, or I think it's completely different. It
No,
sounds
you're right.
completely
Yeah.
different. Cool. And then, okay, is he the person who got you writing, or were you doing that already?
I was doing a little bit of writing in high school. Uh, I yeah, I would say there was a little bit. Miss Mitchell from freshman year, she encouraged us to write, and I had a few tunes here and there. My brother and I, we had a group together, so we would both write some things for that. But I would say really getting into developing a composition was definitely at Brubeck. Just you remember those assignments where Stefan would have us moving the bass and
Yep.
half steps and whole steps, like trying to make what I felt were fully fledged compositions using those methods. That was really the goal for a lot of those tunes, to make them good enough to not sound like exercises, but sound like
Right.
meaningful pieces of music.
Right. Nice, man. And before we go on, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, who is Joe Gilman?
Joe Gilman is, I'd say he's in that top five list of educators. I mean, Joey G was our,
Joey
I,
G.
I'd be remiss. I don't want to undersell. I mean, he taught me piano, theory, history. The man just taught us everything. I mean, I was particularly. I mean, I'm not the only one. I have a special place for Joe in my heart. Just how he was another instructor who he knew I can be a rowdy student, and he found a way to make things interesting for me. He he found a way to push me still. That was the thing that I would happen in school for me. I always feel like I'm being pushed, and so I could lose interest or lose focus on some things. But Joe always was just on top of it. I was like, okay, you got that? All right, we'll try this out.
Right.
And then he would always be giving me something to think about, something to break down and work on. And Joe Gilman, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you for that detour. But yeah, I'm a big believer in acknowledging the great teachers because I
Yeah.
think they deserve it. You know. All right. After Brubeck, what came next?
Well, you and I made the voyage over back to the East Coast, and we started at the new school. And I was fortunate because I came to New York already knowing cats who I met in high school. One of those cats being James Francis,
Hmm.
extremely close friend of mine. Also Jeremy Dutton, I met him, and they were at New School with us, and so I came, and James put me on one of my first gigs with him at Winter Jazz Fest. Uh, that was like one of my first gigs with some publicity. I played when I did the gig with Gerald my senior year of high school. He was like, just let me know when you get to New York, and so I did, and I think we played duo. I knew like Russell Hall already, so when I got to New York, went to the small sessions. Russell was, I believe, he was a regular already, so I got in with him, and I was fortunate enough to play with his group or play. There was a family at Dizzy's, so I was fortunate enough to play the late night sessions there. And at the time when we first moved out, uh, Ulysses Owens was booking Minton's, so he gave me my first leader gig in New York, probably a week or two into moving there, and that was the very first iteration of Good Vibes with Jalen Archie on drums,
Hmm.
Jeremy Corn, and Ben Tabario, uh, who I mean, before there were still a lot of cats I met when we were at Brubeck. I did Banff over the summer, the camp run by Vijay in Alberta, Canada. Uh, Met a lot of people there. That's how I met Ben. When we moved to New York, we eventually became roommates. Now, actually, he moved back in. We're roommates now again. But I moved to New York and just used those networking skills. Went to the sessions and I mean, I was certainly blessed to know a lot of people to be able to play in a lot of different situations. The vibraphone proves to be a very malleable instrument in a lot of different situations, and so I was fortunate to be able to come in and do a lot of different types of music, at once. I I it's a good problem to have, I guess, but I came in and was working more than I was able to keep up with school, and eventually I took time, would end up taking time away and coming back, taking time away and going on the road. I mean, eventually I left for a while, went on the road, joined Marquise Hill's group, which proved to be a lot of learning. I learned so much just from watching him, as a band leader. He's not the type to tell you what to do per se, but the freedom with which he allowed me to explore as a supporting musician, um, just me learning what a band leader looks like, being on the experience of being on the road, how it's not everything that it's cracked up to be, you know, uh, learning a lot in that way. I met and got closer with great mentor and friend of mine, Ambrose Akamusiri. Just fell in love with his music and his whole ideology and just everything he does as a musician and as a person. Uh, got close with Gerald, Melissa Aldana. I mean, the list goes on. A lot of musicians have sort of taken me under their wing, and I've just been able to perform with them, learn from them, learn how they write, learn how they lead a band, and just pick up on all these things and try to implement it into my own group, which I was also fortunate enough to come to New York and be able to start a group and, got some gigs. And I moved to New York and was doing the Smalls late night. And that's really where we just started just shedding the music and trying to figure out a band sound. There were a lot of bad gigs. Bad is subjective, there were a lot of tough gigs. Um, and we were just figuring it out, you know. Uh, I moved to New York. I had met Emmanuel when I first got here, but after doing a Dizzy's late set, he came through the session. We did one session together with Kwaku on drums actually, and we played actually I think Ill Relations,
Oh yeah.
and I think from there it was just like, all right, man, yeah, we're in there together. Like that was the start of that, and he's one of my closest friends and musical inspirations actually, and that's been I guess the New York experience so far.
Man, I want to talk about Emmanuel a bit, but before we do, I should say I don't know that I've ever properly thanked you, but and you might not even remember, but when we moved to New York, at least for that first year, it was like every other week I'd get a text from you. Hey man, want to come to my gig? I'll put you in the front row for free. You just got to buy drinks, whatever. And
Yeah,
and all the gigs you mentioned, the Mintons, the Dizzies, um, the Smalls, not to mention the duo gig with Gerald. Thanks to you, I got to sit backstage at Jazz at Lincoln Center.
yeah, man.
And be this close to the Cats. It was really something. And you're talking about learning from these guys. I obviously didn't play with them at the time, but it was a learning experience for me too, to kind of observe how you were handling that and how you were interacting with these different musicians in different contexts. You
Man,
mentioned.
and there was such a reason for that. I mean, since we were roommates at Brubeck, and even when we weren't, when I was with Lucas, but still, you had such a specific insight into my whole process as a musician and as a person. And we're close. You're my brother, man. And so it was important to me that you were there before we got to New York, and I wanted you to be involved once we were there. And to this day, I mean, you hit me up, I got you. It's that's a big thing about music in general for me. That's important to me. The family, the familial aspect, how close we get with each other, because it's really about the relationships that we form that shape the music that we make. And
Right.
so, man, I mean, I love you, man. You're my brother, and I wanted to just keep you in the fold, for sure.
I love you too, Maestro. But I should say that may have inadvertently, and I probably didn't even know it at the time, that may have given me this kind of archival bug. I think I can distinctly remember telling friends, especially my Boston cats, just like, yeah, this kid, like, I don't know why you're not checking him out yet. There's plenty of stuff online, and sure enough, right? And I remember probably around 2017ish, 2016, you were doing gigs with Gilad, and like all the people you mentioned, the the caliber of cat, right,
Yeah.
kept getting higher and higher, and I'm like, it's gonna happen, and that led us to Kingmaker.
Mhm.
So explain Kingmaker for a second. When was that recorded?
Man, that was recorded December 2016
Okay.
after after all those late night sessions at Smalls.
And you know something, man? That was another thing, was you bringing the rough cuts to my dorm room at the time, right? Check this out, man. I mean, it was really, in hindsight, that was a very special thing. And I remember you were kind of uh, at something of a loss for how to release it. I remember at one point you were talking to Eric Harland, I think, about
Mhm.
his label. I'm sure there
GSI.
were some other meetings and stuff. Could you just talk about the process and how it is you eventually got to Blue Note?
Yeah, I mean, I think after recording, I mean, my parents helped with it. A company in Chicago, DMDL, that my brother works with, Mark Ingram. We grew up with him. He has a musical organization. He also helped with it, but for the most part, that project was out of pocket, And I tried to pay the cats, paid for the studio and the session and everything. Um, and after everything was recorded and mixed, I was like, all right, well, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna release it? So I was going around, just trying to figure out how to reach out to labels and things. And excuse me, I was, not many results to the point where I was eventually going to just like release it on Bandcamp, just put it out. And I think maybe I had been trying to do that for a year. And then eventually, right before I was planning to really put it out, figure out how to do CD Baby and all that, I get a call from Don Waz. Uh, and man, you remember his son Soul Waz?
No, I don't think I ever met Soul.
You met Soul. He auditioned for Brubeck.
Oh, what did he
Our
play?
first year, he played bass. It's
Oh,
when
yeah,
they were
blonde,
doing
blonde,
yep,
curly hair.
yep.
Okay, okay. Wow, I had no idea that's who that was.
Yeah, that's Don's
All
son.
these years, man.
And
Wow.
Don was telling me he just asked Soul and his brother, like, who were the cats on the scene today? And they were like, they named me along with other cats. And I mean, I met Don briefly when we went to Monterey
Hmm.
with Brubeck, and he was meeting with James. Actually, that's where James and Don got together in Jamestown with Blue Note. And I met him for a second, but nothing business wise or anything. And so fast forward, Don knows of me, but he once he started to check out the music, he just gave me a call, and it didn't, I don't know. It doesn't take much to sell somebody to sign to Blue Note, but he was just talking about how Herbie and Wayne and all the cats were our age, 23 or 22 at the time, releasing these albums, and that's what he wanted to continue. Young cats releasing this forward thinking music, and,
That's
and
dope. Like, good for him.
it,
That's really.
I thought that was amazing. I mean, yeah, he had me sold.
Yeah, right. Of course.
Business wise, I got a lawyer. Took a year negotiating contract or whatever, uh, and now it's a blessing to have a label behind me. And I know it's not something everybody has, and there are pros and cons to all of it. And I find that finding whatever works. I think there's a way to do it obviously to release music with a label or without a label, and this has been a blessing for me in this instance. I'm sure looking back, I would have found a way regardless,
Right.
to release the music. Um,
For one, am happy that it went the way that it went.
yeah,
I mean, genuinely, I think that's one of those things that, like, you couldn't have asked for a better situation,
yeah,
right?
truly.
And it has enabled, the next record, which we're going to talk about. I really think it's great though, man. And so maybe before we get to that next record, Kingmaker, right? I asked you about Emmanuel. Uh, One of the things before we talk about Emmanuel, actually, one of the things that was really cool for me about Kingmaker was that a lot of the music was music I saw you write.
Yeah.
You know, like there was no like, man, I wonder if I could ask him how he wrote this. It's like I
Mm.
know how you wrote
You
those
know
tunes.
exactly how they came about. Yeah.
And so, could you talk about like first of all the recording date? I know we're getting into some specifics here, but
Mhm.
was it like a million takes a song? Was it or was it? Did it feel comfortable? Were you guys just like a couple hours and done? How did that play out?
Well, we only had one day in the studio, so we did about 13 tunes in one day. And I don't like to take more than one take of anything. If we get a good take where the form is fine and the melody's cool, that's gonna be the take. I'm not one to do another take simply to do another solo. I'm of the mindset is whatever you do is in the moment, and as long as it's honest and to the best of your ability in that moment, I accept that. And so also, that was like I was saying, it's a culmination of everything we were doing at Smalls, all these gigs at the Jazz Gallery, at Dizzy's. And then also I had asked Harish to come in and produce the record, Harish Raghavan. And he came, listened to a couple gigs, listened to some bootlegs, and then we had a good rehearsal with him where he like really, really nitpicked some things. So by the time we got to the recording, it was for the most part set. We knew what we were doing. We knew how things were gonna go or should go, and we just tried to keep pushing. And
Mhm.
I mean, I learned a lot. Uh, we in just in that one day, I think we did about 12 to 13 tunes. I can't remember how many is on the actual record, but it it came together, and I was proud to have been able to do it. Man, fun fact: uh, the studio we were going to use told us they had a vibraphone, but when we got there, it was broken. So I ended up having to call Sasha and use her
Oh,
vibes.
cool.
So you're hearing Sasha's vibes on Kingmaker
No
actually.
kidding. Wow. She never told me that. I'm gonna have her at the end of March. She'll be on
Yeah,
the show. So I'll be sure to mention that to her.
yeah.
That's really cool.
Kingmaker wouldn't have happened without Sasha.
It sounds like a nice instrument. I mean,
It's a
the
beautiful
tone
instrument. Yeah.
qualities, yeah. Man, I got to tell you about that record. There's so much that's killing about it, but no lie, not kissing up here. This is God's honest truth. Your solo on Frida's Disposition is one of my favorite solos in recorded music. It's
Thank
just so deep, man. It's all those things everyone loves about your playing, it's the harmonic content, the rhythms, right? But the way you paced it was so, especially considering it was 2016, right? You were 21.
you. Yeah, 21.
So, I mean, man, you don't sound 21 on that
Man, I
solo.
I would say so that you know Frida's. So
Mhm.
there's the regular form, and then in the solo there's a little like C minor, 1 to 5 vamp. Basically, that's what it is. At Brubeck, no, not Brubeck. At New School, I was an ensemble with James and Jeremy, and Kendrick Scott was our guest teacher, and it was his idea to have that vamp. It just has a, and he's the one who helped get this idea of having different places, different settings. So that was one place, and then we do the solo there. It releases into what became Jeremy Corn's solo, which Jeremy's solo is actually my favorite solo on that.
Well, yeah, he does sound phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm not short shrifting anyone here. I'm just
His
telling you.
that solo is actually probably my favorite of the record. Um, yeah, I
That's
mean,
great. Well, all right, man. So let's backtrack a little bit. I'm glad we talked about that. But let me ask you about the band. Obviously, your hookup with Emmanuel is famous. But the whole band has a sound,
mhm.
like you said. It has a spirit, and I guess at what point did you know like it's time to make a record?
I mean, I think it was towards a time when I knew like that was enough on like the smallest late nights, on the
Right.
late night gigs. We had a few good like main sets at the gallery. Rio has always been supportive of me in general, and just we had a good number of gigs at the gallery. We had we had like a book of music. One of the videos that's on YouTube is us playing "Touched by an Angel." I think that was with Fabian and Dana on the gig.
That video is great, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
another one.
But just that, some we had some gigs like that, and I felt good. I felt good about how the band was sounding and how we were playing. And at some point, I was just like, we should record. I had Emmanuel in my ear, so he's definitely like, yeah, man, we got to record. Like, let's make it happen. And I think at the time, I had been playing with Harish in some capacity. I was fortunate enough to play a gig with Ambrose and get that experience. Um, but at the time, I think, yeah, playing a lot with Harish, getting ideas from Harish, and he supported us in recording, and so I asked him to come in and produce. I know he's really particular into sound in general and just form, and just he's studious, so I know he would have the band sounding good, and I think that's what happened. Uh,
Awesome. Is Emmanuel a collaborator? I hate to use that word. I think it's cheesy, but I kind of, from knowing you both a little bit, I know him a little bit. It kind of seems like you're giving each other little nuggets of content, like
yeah,
check out this chord, or maybe you should do this with the gig or whatever.
yeah.
It just kind of seems like you're pushing each other in different directions. Is that not necessarily opposed,
Mhm.
but you're kind of influencing each other from
Most definitely. I mean, at this point, we rap about every gig we got coming up. We talk about it
really.
and talk about what we're doing, give each other ideas. Even with music, it'll be something like do this chord or man mess with this sound or or messing with the rhythm. We're just constantly bouncing ideas off of each other, uh, and we're coming from the same place. I've always felt, yet interpreting music differently,
Hmm.
and so I mean like I feel like he does a particular thing, comes to Good Vibes, does the same thing, but it's a different setting, so comes off differently. I love his group. I mean, his group
Yeah,
is one of my favorite bands to listen to.
his record is dope.
Micah, Micah
Yeah,
and Daryl, Kwaku. I mean, just
and Quaku's my guy. Yeah,
he's got the cats
of course.
like that. That heavy hitters. So and harmonically, melodically, everything that they're doing is. I am inspired by that sound. In some way, I do try to get that sound in Good Vibes, but Good Vibes is also a different thing, and
Right.
I know I leave Good Vibes up to the personnel, the people in the band. A lot of it is just I'll bring the chart, bring the tune, and then how are we gonna do it today? You know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. The following year, well, so that came out 2019, that record.
Mhm.
Following year was Who Are You? But of course, there's now a 3-year window where you've been working on other stuff, and
Yeah,
of
man.
course, there are actually some tunes from the Brubeck days,
Yeah.
and it's kind of interesting to hear how those have developed. But talk about what led up to Who Are You, some of the process of recording and finalizing, etc.
So yeah, in them 3 years, I was doing a lot more sideman work. All the gigs I was mentioning before, and come 2019, Sound Blue Note and released the record. It was 3 years later. Me, Dutton, and Emmanuel were listening to the record like, yeah, man, we gotta put something more recent out. We just I felt like we as a group, as a unit, had gotten so much better. And it's different if you're in your 30s and 40s and you wait 3 years and put out a record. You're already established. But we were young.
Right.
We are young, and we put out Kingmaker, and I feel like that was good. But I feel like we had gotten so much better. I personally, I felt like my writing concept, everything had changed and gotten a little better. So we were anxious to record again, and and after the record dropped, we got some tours and a lot more playing opportunities, and that's when Kanoa joined the band. I mean, I've always loved Kanoa's playing, and once she was in New York, it was like, okay, yeah, we did. I think I did a quartet gig with her, Dutton, and Maria Grand, and I was like, okay, yeah, there it is, there it is, that's killing. And she joined the group, and it was like butter, just smooth. And just we were playing, and something clicked. We got into a groove. We just I think we had taken some time away from each other and came back, did a Winterfest gig, Winter Jazz Fest gig at the top of the year, or was on bass for that one. But just we came back together and played without a rehearsal, and just it was like band. And from then I was like, all right, we got to record again. I got to bring some music. So we did these tours in 2019 in 2020. Uh, Oh no, we did these tours in 2019, and at the end of 2019, I was like, we got to record, So that's what came out of it, and we had 2 days in the studio this time. But again, it was like we did all this touring, and playing all these gigs, whereas the music
Already.
was more or less set. I
Yeah.
didn't for this album for Who Are You, the first half of the record. That's the order that we recorded in, and those are the takes. I was like, I just wanted to really capture the energy that we would normally have on a gig.
That doesn't surprise me because from a programmatic standpoint, yeah, it's clear that they are all meant to be in that order.
Hmm.
It's a very you know intelligently paced, you could say, set of
Thank you.
tunes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also want to say, man, you made a very very cool orchestrational choice with the harp. How did you come to make that choice? I think it's dope, especially on those particular tunes, man. It's really nice.
Thank you, man. I had started playing. I met Brandy and started playing a lot with Brandy with Micaiah McCraven. The first gig we did together was at some warehouse in Queens, and we just improvised. That was also the first gig where I got on the gig, and Max just like, all right, we're just gonna improvise the whole gig. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing completely at the time, but that he recorded that gig, and that ended up being music from his album Universal Beings, which went on to critical acclaim. I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of his best albums, one of my favorite gigs. Um, and that since then, I've been doing a lot of gigs with Brandy in that capacity, also with Casa Overall and some other people. Um, and just have a I have a spot for Brandy in my heart as just an eclectic instrument, who affected by volume and just the way she's approaching the music, not so much always from a like a jazz boy standpoint or so much of a jazz musician. And I really took the time to like go over like chords with Brandy, really understand like how the harp works, understanding when the pedals shift and things like that in the music. And we just developed relationship over time. I mean, she's like a big sister to me. She gives me advice about things, and we played. She just played a gig of mine at Roulette this past January, uh, and just I mean the harp. I mean, it's such a beautiful sound. The harp and the vibraphone. I mean, this gig we just did at Roulette was with Gabrielle Garron flute. Just I wanted to explore that sound. Brandy did a gig with me last July. I am putting her in different situation. She was the main comping instrument for that gig with like Emmanuel and Marquise, just exploring different sounds. And just with the album, I knew she would add. She would just add to whatever she was going to be on.
Right on, man. Okay, and is she did the she walks in the spirit.
Yeah, she was on that gig.
Yeah, I was just listening to that last night, man. It's great, great. So, which kind of precipitates my next question, which is, what's next? What are you doing? It's lockdown. You know, what's going on?
Man, I mean, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to still get gigs here and there in the city from different venues. I'm currently curating at Seeds in Brooklyn,
Nice.
getting folks some gigs and doing some gigs of my own. I have. I'm trying to record something soon. Uh, I would like to record my large ensemble parables. Also, that She Walks in the Spirit project, and I mean the project I did with Brandy last July, Praise in the Midst of the Storm, which was commissioned by the Jazz Coalition about basically writing about the, the pandemic, the quarantine, anything, any positive message from that. So I wrote music for that from there. That was with Brandy, Emmanuel, Marquise Hill, Craig Weinrib, and Desron Douglas. I also have a project, Being a Young Black Man, a commission from Jazz Gallery. It's a bunch of things I want to record, and I'm just trying to figure out which
Good.
is next and how to do it. But I mean, I've been using this time just to finish school,
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
focused, and I feel like I'm a little more mature now to get it done.
Right on, man. Um, and of course, you mentioned Gabby. Could you say a word about Gabby? Is Gato's gift about her?
Man, Gato, yeah, it is. I call her Gato. I mean, we've been friends since we started at uh, at New School together. And man, Gatos came about. We were over here just reading through some old music that that she had written when she was like maybe 9. I don't know.
Oh wow.
And basically, Gatos is the whole melody she had already written out. It was just I took the information and organized it, but all the notes and the harmonic information was there.
Wow.
I organized the melody, put some chorus to it, did a little vamp at the end.
It sounds like a Joel song, man. That's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it was I. What I did was I had somebody uh, write it out, handwritten, and just put it laminated it or whatever, and gave it to her as a gift. And so that's Gato's gift.
Oh,
But
that's nice.
yeah, man, we've been just writing together, making music together, recording, shedding, using this time to get closer as as musicians as well as friends.
I love that vamp at the end too. That's really pretty. And of course, I should say on the record, I know I'm all over the place here, but 312, man.
Oh man, thank you.
That's home for me, man. You know how I my
Yeah,
bag.
yeah.
That's great, man. All right, a couple. I know we're running short on time here, but
No,
just a
we're
few
good. We're
more
good.
things. Oh, great. Um, oh, and one more shout out. She walks in the spirit, Savannah.
Yeah.
Savannah Harris. She was with me at
Oh,
MSM.
at MSM, right? Yeah. I mean, me and Savannah have been playing together now for a few years with
She's so bad, bro.
specifically with this
She's amazing.
trumpeter Peter Evans,
Okay, yeah.
and then I mean with Maria, just different gigs actually. So Savannah's also, I guess, a long time collaborator now.
Yeah, man. That's awesome. Um, I want to ask you about composition. Um, I was fortunate to see your process. I've asked a few people what their process is. And I think it's fair to say that your process is that you are constantly writing.
Yeah.
I used to see you in practice rooms and you'd say, Brittany, come in here. And I'd be like, what up? And and you'd be like, does this sound good? I'm like, of course it sounds good. But you were just like trying stuff. And that was a good lesson for me. I think I was too much of a married to content kind of guy and didn't really have the willingness to try as a
Mhm.
composer or a player, right? So could you talk about just give some advice to aspiring composers, you know?
Do it. That's, it comes down to just do it. Just it's. I mean, some of it is n- not psyching yourself out.
Right.
It's a problem we have is judging the work before it's even created. You know, I a lot of I can't remember if there's any music on. Actually, yeah. So one of the tunes on "Who Are You," I can't remember the name of it. Uh, I just one day at New School, So for a while at new school, to try to be on time, I was getting to school early, and I would just go in a room and then just play, or just like write random notes on paper and try to make a tune out of that. So
Hmm.
I know which one it is. Waiting on a Solemn Reminiscence
Yeah,
is one of those tunes where I just wrote random notes and then came back to it and tried to make a tune from that. And that's one thing. I think part of my process is that the process always changes. A lot of times I just be singing into my phone, recording voice memos, and then going and figure out what it was later. Or so that'd be a melodic idea, or I take a rhythmic idea, do the same thing, or go home and just sit at the drums and work out what is this that I'm feeling. This is an odd, and so often it'd be like a bar 4 and then 3/8, and just really just sit down and just play that time a lot, till I have it inside, and then try to put something melodic inside of it if it's supposed to have that.
yeah,
With Marshland, uh, that tune came about after meeting Steve Coleman, did Banff, just and being introduced to a different way of thinking of rhythm. And so I went back home to Chicago that summer and just tried to write such an angular melody built around the rhythmic motif, which I wrote first, and then tried to make a melody around that. It took us years to be able to play that, bro. I mean, years. To this day, we did we did a gig last year, or was it? It might have been this year. It was either this year or last year. Good vibes and Marshland. We're still just trying to figure out different new ways to come at it. Just it's it's things like that, and I don't ever feel like I've fully mastered a tune that I've written, but it's that's a part of the process as well. Is writing it and then figuring out how to play it or how it should be played or different ways to play it. A lot of it is just trying, a lot of trying new things, just doing it,
right.
getting ideas, bouncing ideas off of each other.
I told a student recently to tattoo the word try backwards to his forehead so
Yeah.
that whenever he looked in the mirror, he got the reminder. Um, all right, man. And then what about rhythm? You taught me, you literally taught me how to play odd time signatures. But it's not just that, just rhythm in general. Can you give advice? I mean, one of the realizations I made, and it might be particular to my instrument, but rhythm on guitar is a technique issue.
Hmm.
And I wish someone had told me that like years ago. And I wonder, being the rhythmic wizard that you are, if you have some other kind of insight of that nature. Is there any kind of thing you would tell a student who is struggling with rhythm?
To be able to play it, I mean, everybody should play a drum. Everybody should be able to play rhythm on drums. But even just playing tapping, I think it's important to feel rhythms inside in your body physically, because then when you're able to do that, I feel like it is ingrained in you, and you're able to put it out, right?
Yeah,
And however that may be on whatever instrument, if you can feel it in your body, then it's easier to translate it into onto an instrument. If you don't understand how it feels in your body, it's that much harder to be able to put it on, because then you're just thinking of it mentally, but you're not feeling it.
right.
I think once you feel the rhythm, it that makes it easier to utilize the rhythm. And so, because I would say the vibraphone is also in that same way. It's a technique thing. Being able to. I mean, it's basically a drum. You're hitting it with mallets. I feel like the vibes is just a melodic drum. Um, and so a lot of the rhythm is how I feel rhythm, and then how I put it onto the instrument. And
Right.
but I mean, I spend a lot of time just practicing rhythmic things. I shed drums at home for hours. I'll just sit,
Yeah.
type something in the iReal book and play along with it, or type something onto No Flight, play along with it, or just get the metronome and play along with it. And once I started getting into these odd time things, how the beat would flip over the metronome, trying to leave the metronome where it is and practice subdividing. Really, I like to. I think it's important to subdivide. Excuse me, in bigger and smaller subdivisions, so that the music can morph to where it needs to, depending on a given situation.
Right.
Um, I'm trying to think of an example now, but I can't. But just it depends on, like, if you're feeling something double time, half time, etc. The way you feel rhythm informs how the tune will be played, I think.
Right on. Um, education. So you have, I guess, do you have some students currently?
Not at the moment. Some cats have asked for lessons, but I don't think I should add anything more on my plate. But I I have given like a few talks and master classes. I gave some lessons last semester too. Um, I just, if somebody hits me up, asks me questions,
Well, what I'm getting at is, I see myself as equal parts guitarist and educator.
hmm
I think I was averse to that for a while, but I've come around, And I guess I would just say there are people who are 100% educators.
hmm
And there's obviously a danger in that, right? Um, if you can't hang, then the student might not be quite as receptive to
hmm
the content, right? So could you just offer some words uh, of advice to aspiring teachers and things they should, you
Man,
know?
yeah, I have learned that I like to teach. uh, there's this camp. Yuri Pukul, this tenor saxophonist. He's from Slovenia, and he has this camp. And the past 2 years before the pandemic, uh, I went to Slovenia and taught at those camps. And just what it is basically working with a small ensemble for about a week, and then you do a performance. And I love that situation, working with a group, working trying to figure out the same thing I had to do with my group, figure out how to bring all these personalities together and create good music. How to put something out worthwhile, which is subjective, but to basically to work together as a team and communicate something.
Hmm.
So for teaching, and this is something Gabby actually helped me with last year when I was doing that camp. It's I may have an idea of how somebody should pick up on something, like, all right, man, if you're trying to feel this rhythm, practice it like this. But that's not always the case. It's understanding how your student learns is a big part of it. Being able to adapt. Being able to adapt applies to a lot of different situations. But so in teaching, being able to adapt to your student, how the student learns, that is probably one of the biggest takeaways I've learned. And because I've learned that about life in general, adapting to the situation. Um, if somebody, listening to paying attention to what somebody needs,
Yeah.
paying attention to how you've affected somebody or how something affects somebody. If you're in an argument with somebody and they tell you how something affected them, it's not your place to say, "Well, I didn't mean that." Pay attention to what you did and how that affected them, and that informs how things will go moving forward. Things like that. That's probably the biggest takeaway I've learned from teaching is adapting in that manner.
Right on. All right, man. Just a few more things here. First of all, I have a list of people here, and I wonder if I could get. There's probably 5 or 6 of them here. Just get a quick anecdote, some personal encounter that you've had with these individuals
hmm
uh, that you might remember. So the first one I have on the list is Christian McBride.
Ah, boss man. He was uh he was the first, I guess, star you want to call that. If I'm remembering correctly, probably if not the first, one of the first musicians that I spent time with, like, personally, like doing the Monk All Star Band. My junior year of high school, we went to Philly and did a peer to peer tour to different high schools in Philly with Christian, and just spent that personal time with him, and just that's where I learned just hit that bigger than life personality is all the time. I mean, and just the sheer mastery of the instrument. He just he's one of the best, greatest bass players of all time. Just the musicality, the soulfulness. He's just cool. It's just and he would call me Little Bags.
I remember.
When and yeah, we saw him again at Brubeck, and actually did a interview with him a couple weeks ago, um, remembering about those gigs and how I was explaining how when he came, I don't know if you remember, but me and Jalen were heavy into Live with the Plug Nickel,
Hmm.
and that's we were in our bag trying to play like that, and he had imparted the profound wisdom of not forgetting the audience, and we
Oh
were going,
man,
we
he
were going for
imparted it
so
in a
much stuff.
particular way to one of us. Man, I'll just say a quick word. I know we're losing time here, but that I've never told that story except to like close friends and stuff. Christian, I had been all of us, right? We
Yeah,
knew in September that he was going to be there in April or whatever, March,
right,
whatever it was. So the whole year was us like waiting for this gig, right?
right.
And I had finally figured out some like tricks as far as like speed
Hmm.
because for I could never play fast, right? And I remember getting up. We played. We played. What was that blues? Oh, when will the blues leave?
Yeah, yeah.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. No one counted it off. No one like. I don't know. They just. I just distinctly remember you starting,
Yeah.
and it was so freaking fast. It was like.
Sorry.
And I'm thinking, okay, I got this. I've been working on my tricks, right? First chorus. Oh, I didn't get it. I'll get it on the next chorus. Didn't get it. And so on, right? I don't know. I played a long time. I played way too long. It was like 15 choruses or
Yeah.
something. And I remember him saying that exact comment, like to us, but then to me, like, "Hey, man, you can stop playing. Like it's okay." And
I
and
remember
you
him
know what?
taking us
It
to
was
the
great.
back.
What's that?
I remember him taking us in the back and talking to me and Jalen
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
I know y'all are trying all your tricks and you getting into your Herbie bag. And because when he said that without us telling him we were getting into the plug nickel, I knew he already knew.
Right. 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 Yeah, man, that was quite a night. I'm really glad we had that experience.
Mhm.
But okay, second person, Bobby Hutcherson.
Ah, yeah, man. I wish I was able to spend more time with him. I was blessed by Joey G. Man, he took the time to come to campus, pick me up, and he drove me down to Bobby's house. And I mean, looking back, I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready. But in the moment, still, I got so much out of it. I mean, he listened to me play, and he told me a couple. He said, keep doing what I'm doing on the instrument. Some things about phrasing and space, obviously, but the most important thing, which I came back to campus and took to heart with a vengeance. So he was like, write every day, write music every day about everything, about your life, about the weather, emotions, a color, anything. We looked outside. He had like I think sliding doors looking outside, and there were some clouds in it. He's like, look at that. That's you could write about that. And I came back and did that. I tried to do that to the best of my ability. And I still do. I get inspiration if I get an idea, I run. I got to figure it out. Gavin will tell you we're trying to be walking out the house, and I get an idea about something, and I'm like, hold on, let me type this up, please.
That's great, man.
Make us late. That and getting into his music now, I understand all this different situations that Bobby played in. The man is a wizard. He was a wizard. I mean, just how he was a chameleon, how he just fit into so many different situations, from Dolphy to Herbie, his own stuff. I mean, and then
To like the funk stuff and
yeah,
yeah,
I mean, Harold Land, all everything, the
it is a
commercial
wizard.
success, Montera, just all that. It's that, and I feel like that was such a good example of a consummate, well-rounded musician who is completely in the swirl, straight down the middle in the tradition, providing commercial music that the masses can enjoy, and while all still remaining true to himself, you know.
Right.
And then just the technique on the instrument. I mean, he had hands.
Right on, man. Um, okay, a couple more. Wynton Marsalis.
Skane, yeah. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Winton took me to Europe for the first time. We went to Marciac, France, with Russell, Kyle, Michaela, all of them. Again, just the coolest. I mean, just the sheer mastery of the instrument, just the way he teaches, the way, everything is a conversation, the way he makes you think. Um, let's see what else. A funny story. So Stefan couldn't do a gig with the orchestra, so he asked me to sub, and I think it was just like a tune or two. I go to the rehearsal at Lincoln Center. I'm feeling all right. I'm thinking we're gonna be reading something. They didn't tell me what I'm playing. I'm thinking I'm gonna be reading something. So I get in the rehearsal and they're practicing, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna rehearse." So they tell me we're just gonna play "Embraceable You." You just play the melody, and then we have these parts, and then you take a solo. And then we got to the tune, and they start counting off, and I was like, "Do you have any music?" And they're like, "No, just play the tune." And I was like, "I don't know the tune." And then they all go, "Oh no, Sherman Irby, he don't know the tune. What's happening with this generation?" I didn't know "Embraceable You," and they were cool about it. Just like I felt the correct amount of embarrassment. I went home, shedded the tune, came back, had it memorized the next day and everything. But
Nice.
that I don't even know if Skane remembers that, but just that moment was important for me. Just a good kick in the butt.
Gretchen
Learning.
Parlato.
Ooh, Gretchen. I mean, so for I guess for more contemporary modern music, she has been a force and an impact in vocal jazz, in vocal music in general. Um, she her voice is it's beautiful, it's so sweet. Um, Frida's was actually written. When did I write Frida's? I can't remember when I wrote Frida's, but the lyrics came about in that ensemble at New School with James and Jeremy and Bianca Muniz, who I'm not sure if you remember. She was also in that ensemble, and she
Yep.
actually wrote the lyrics for it, and she was singing it. And when it came time to record the album, I think I had asked Harish, like, "You think Gretchen would be down?" He's like, "Oh yeah, man, don't worry about it. I'll hit her up." And sure enough, we were just able to just she came in and knocked it out, one take. It was new for me. The way that I start the tune, I'm not happy with myself. Just the
Really?
way the way that because I didn't have much experience supporting vocalists. I didn't grow up really playing with vocalists like that outside of church, and especially on the vibraphone. So the I just might I feel like now I would have made different decisions on that intro, but she came in, she knew what she was doing. And so like I was just fortunate enough to witness her in the studio like that, and just listen. I listened to her music, and it was just a blessing to have her in there.
Excellent. I know we're short. One more for you. Ambrose Akinmusiri.
Man, I feel like I've talked about the man a lot in the past few years. Bro's just I he's a large inspiration. Just the way that he decides to release to express himself musically as an improvisationalist, as a composer, as a band leader. In a way, it's everything I loved about Miles and his group in the
Hmm.
second quintet. The freedom that they had, the the way they were pushing the forward thinking compositions, the interplay in the rhythm section. I feel like there was all of that in in Brose's group. That especially that quintet with Walter. Just it was a continuation of that, and that's where I saw tradition, and but also just harmonically, just that his what's the name of the album? When the Heart Emerges Glistening.
Hmm.
That I like studied that, listened to that religiously. Kingmaker is built off of how I feel like that record is structured. Like
Interesting.
opening with "Touched by an Angel." Uh,
Mm.
I feel the mood of that tune is similar to Confessions. Confessions to My
Yeah,
Unborn
yeah.
Daughter. Everything after that, just the programming of Kingmaker, I put after that record, and even Who Are You, I based loosely around um, when the imagined savior is easier to paint. The mood of that one, I feel like that one's a little darker, and I'd say the mood of Who Are You is a little darker, but a little more mature for us. I mean, we played Bartha. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I and I when I signed with Blue Note, there was a time when he and I were just rapping almost every week, just about different things, about business, uh, as a musician, as a man. He's a close mentor who I constantly look to as an inspiration and just all around good people. I love the cat. Uh, Eventually, I want to do something with him. I'm probably always gonna have a piece of music by him in the in the repertoire. It's certainly one of the closest people I am to musically. Looking up to.
Okay, and then as a last question, I've phrased this slightly differently for everybody. For you, here's how I'll phrase it. What should I, Sean Britt, be doing with my time right now during the age of lockdowns? And I have some goals, I think, but I maybe someone who's a little farther along can push me in a particular direction.
Uh, I guess generally, without knowing what the goals are, figuring out how to set up your next thing. You know, uh, Playing wise, shed. I know. I mean, I know you, so I know. I know.
Yeah.
I know you know how to shed. You know, uh, Shedding, writing. But I guess it does depend on what your goals are. But in general, I would say using this time to set yourself up for the future, whether that be playing wise, whether that even be musically, financially. Seeing excuse me, where you want to be in the future, 5, 10, 20 years down the line, setting yourself up like that. Just, I guess, planning ahead in however that may manifest.
Great. Well, thank you, man. You know what? I didn't ask you about Good Vibes Inc. Um, is there anything? Do you want to speak about that real quick, or about anything in particular else that I didn't get to?
That was, I mean, that was just purely from a business standpoint, taxes,
Oh, I see.
making all that easier.
I
That
got you.
was a part of that. As musicians, that's certainly a helpful thing
Yeah.
with taxes.
All right. Well, thank you, man. It's been really cool. I'm really glad just to see you again.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, man.
But you've been a great guest, and really this show is called Gen Y Jazz. I
Mm,
don't know too many millennial jazz musicians who are more legit than so I'm thrilled that you could be here, and I understand you have a melodica at the ready.
I do.
You want to lead us out with something?
I can. Let's see. Mm. Mm.
Beautiful, man.
Thank you, man.
Really awesome. I think you're the first person so far who has referenced music that I talked about during the interview. That's great, man. Man, listen, I love the albums. Who Are You? I probably didn't compliment you enough. I really did love Who Are You, and I think I agree with you that the writing did grow, but I love both. You
Thank
know,
you, man. Thank
Kingmaker meant so much to me just because of how
you. Yeah.
my relationship to it. But and like I said, you've just been such an important person in my own development. So I'm so thrilled you could be here today, and I hope people listening. I don't know how many of them haven't heard of you, but if they haven't, I hope they'll take this chance now to really go deep and check out some of your stuff, man. Thank you, and we'll see you everybody next time.
Thank you,
Peace.
Brittany.